Welcome, and we'll learn about the basics of principles of accounts. In accounting, we record transactions which has taken place in a systematic manner. Every business transaction is recorded in the ledger accounts using the double entry rules. Each business transaction will have at least one debit entry to one account and at least one credit entry to the other account. And the total debit value must always equal to the total credit value for each transaction. So, how do we record? We will follow the rules to record business transactions. For increases, we will debit our expenses, assets, and drawings accounts, and we will credit our liabilities, income, and capital accounts. Other than knowing how to record the transactions when the accounts increases, for decreases in expenses, assets, and drawings accounts, we will credit the accounts, and for decreases in liabilities, income, and capital accounts, we will debit the accounts. Please take note that debit does not necessarily mean increase nor decrease in any account. It depends on the accounts that we are talking about, and the converse is true. Credit does not necessarily mean increase nor decrease. It really depends on the accounts that we are talking about. And please remember date click, where the first letter of debit, expenses, assets, and drawings will form date, and the first letter of credit, liabilities, income, and capital, of course with a K, which help you to remember as date click, to know that for increases in expenses, assets, drawings, we will debit the account, and for increases in liabilities, income, and capital, we will credit the account. And to think about the decrease, how do we record it? We'll just need to swap the first alphabet of these two words, okay, to actually get the recording when the account decreases. So what are assets? Assets are resources that bring useful benefits to the business. Examples include land, property, plant and equipment, motor vehicles, inventory, cash in hand, prepaid expenses, and trade receivables. Liabilities are amounts that the business owes other businesses or people. They are actually obligations that a business has to settle. Examples include mortgage loan, long-term borrowing, bank overdraft, trade payables, and accrued expenses. Please refer to textbook page 29 to 31 to know more about the following slides. Income consists of revenue, other income, or other gains. They are actually amounts earned by a business. Examples include sales revenue, service fees, commission income, rental income, interest income, and discounts received. Expenses are amounts incurred, or we can loosely say, used up by the business so as to generate income. Examples include cost of sales, salaries and wages, rental expenses, utilities, interest expense, and discounts allowed. Capital is the value of personal cash and other assets contributed by the owner to the business. Keywords to indicate capital include owner set up a business with personal assets, owner contributed to the business, owner brought into the business. Drawings are value of cash or other assets taken by the owner for his personal use. Keywords to indicate drawings include Owner took for personal use. Owner withdrew from the business for his. Please refer to textbook page 277 to know more about capital and drawings. Let's try to record the transactions. On 1st January 20x8, the owner set up business with personal check of 30,000. Next, you need to know the keywords from the question. So you will find out that owner set up business refers to capital, and since a personal check of the owner is brought into the business, this refers to cash at bank account for the business. So when owner set up business, his capital will increase in the eyes of the business, and the business cash at bank account will actually increase in value because of this transaction. And this is the format of a journal entry with title journal. Okay, you have 4 columns. You have date, which is blank for now, particulars, which we'll fill up later, and you'll see a debit $ as well as a credit $sign. So from this transaction, we know the date is at 20x8 January 1st, so we need to input this detail into the journal. Next, we know this transaction has a value of 30,000. It will affect 2 accounts by this amount. And having note that cash at bank increases, we will debit the cash at bank account first, and then we will credit the capital account. Remember, increase in assets cash at bank, we will debit the account, and increases in capital, we will credit the account. Please take note that we are following the double entry rule, where at least one account is debited. In this case, it is the cash at bank account which is credited, as well as at least one account will be credited, and the capital account is credited in this case. And the total debit, which is 30,000, is equal to the total credits of 30,000. Please take note that in a journal entry, unless otherwise stated in the question, every student will have to provide a narration. In this case, you will just write, being owner contributed a check 30,000 to set up the business. So from the question, you can write down the date. You also know that capital account is affected. And we will also need to record that the cash at bank of the business has increased. Last but not least, a narrative in this case provides a brief description or explanation of the transaction. It helps in recalling the background of each transaction without having to refer to the source documents. So this is the format of a journal entry. Let's try it one. The first example, on 9th January 20x8, the business purchased goods for resale, $500, and pay check. Please identify the accounts affected. Once you have done so, you will recognize that goods for resale as well as paid check tells us 2 accounts are affected. Goods for resale are actually inventory, and when we purchase goods for resale, our inventory actually increases. And when we pay check is a document which pays out money from the business cash at bank. And therefore, when we pay check, our cash at bank will actually decrease from the point of view of the business. And having the journal, Remember to change the date to 20x8 January 9, and we will debit $500 and credit $500. And we know that increases in inventory, which is an asset, we will debit the account by $500, and when our cash at bank decreases, we will credit the cash at bank with $500, and the narrative will be being purchase of inventory $500 by check. Let's do try it too. On 21st January 20x8, the business paid a check of $1,200 for rent. Take some time to find out the keywords which you would highlight to tell you which accounts are affected. Once you have done so, you realize that paid a check and rent tells us there are two accounts affected in the business. And given the format, rent is an expense. When we pay for rent, it actually increases. And when we pay a check is withdrawn from our cash at bank, so cash at bank will actually decrease. And remember to change the date to 20x8 January 21st. And you know that for increase in rent, which is an expense, we will debit the account by $1,200, and a decrease in cash at bank account, which is an asset, we will credit the cash at bank account by $1,200, and the narrative is being payment of rent $1,200 by check. Alright, we'll try the last example before you will hands-on and learn by yourself how to use the double entry of recording. On 27th of January 20x8, the business sold goods $900 on credit to J Limited. The cost of the goods was $260. Please take some time to underline the keywords to help you identify the accounts affected. Alright, please remember that this is a special transaction. In every sale, the business will record 4 accounts instead of what is normally seen, 2 accounts. If you have seen it just now, you would have underlined sold, on credit to J Limited, cost, and goods. When a business make a sale or sold goods, they actually earn income, which we call sales revenue, which increases. And when we sell on credit to customers, we do not record, or we do not actually receive cash or checks, and therefore we will record this transaction, the amounts that we are supposed to receive, as a trade receivables, and these two accounts are linked to the $900 as underlined, and the next two accounts are actually telling us the cost of the sale, which we call it the cost of sales, which increases with sales, as well as inventory, which goes down when we give our goods to the customers. And these two accounts will be affected by $260. Given the format of a journal, you will first write down the date 20x8 January 27, and you will debit trade receivables J Limited. Please remember the name of the customer is important, okay? Because trade receivables and asset increases, we will debit the account, and sales revenue, which is an income account, increases, we will have to credit the sales revenue account by $900. Next, cost of sales increases, it is an expense, increases in expenses, we will debit the account by $260 in this case, and inventory actually goes down, any decrease in inventory, which is an asset, we will credit the account by 260. Please take note, in this case, we are still following the double entry rules where we have at least one debit to one account and at least one credit to another account. In this case, we have two debits as well as two credits. And the second point to note is that our total debits is actually 1,160. It is actually the same as our total credits, which is 1,160. Please remember to write the narrative. Being sale of goods, $900 on credit to J Limited, the cost of the goods was $260. Going forward, please take note that debits can also be written as DR, a short form, and credit can also be written as CR. Next, Google for Quizlet, search for Mr. Teo Shao Hao, and view the flashcards from first, study set named accounting elements to know more about what are assets, liabilities, drawings, and capital, etc. And two, study set debits and credits to know for a given transaction how much or what should you do to the accounts. You may use the match function after flashcards to test yourself to familiarize on how to record using the double entry system. Of course, do remember the format of recording because from Quizlet, I can only test you on your understanding of which accounts to be debited and credited and how much is to be recorded. I do not require you to do up the formats, but eventually you will need to present your answers in good style with dates, particulars, debit, credit, narrative, and not forgetting the title, which is journal. Thank you so much and study hard.